Hello, this is Babes Macalas once again, and in this video I'm going to talk to you about fasting. And like my two previous videos, one on daily prayer and the other on confession, the content of this video was basically taken from Rediscovering Catholicism by Matthew Kelly. Now, diets don't fail because the program wasn't any good, and they don't fail because the product wasn't any good. Diets fail because we lack the discipline to adopt a program of eating and exercise that nurtures and promotes our maximum physical potential as a human being. Moderation is the only diet most people need, but we seem to lack the inner strength to choose what is good, true, and right for us. And this is one of the reasons that for thousands of years, men and women have been practicing a variety of spiritual exercises. And one of the many benefits of these spiritual exercises is that they strengthen our will. Now, fasting is a primary example of these spiritual exercises. I'm now asking you to open your heart and your mind, set aside your prejudices, and rediscover the genius of fasting and how it can change your life. For the Hebrew people, fasting was infrequent and was usually employed as a sign of repentance. The Torah requires only 1 day of fasting each year, during Yom Kippur, or the Day of Atonement. 4 extra days of fasting were added to the Jewish tradition much later to commemorate the events leading to the destruction of Jerusalem. The Israelites fasted at Samuel's urging as they put away the false gods Baal and Ashtoreth and returned to Yahweh. The entire Israelite army employed fasting as part of its preparation for battle. And Daniel fasted as he prayed, asking God to grant him the ability to understand the scriptures. And at the urging of Jonah and to save the city of Nineveh, the king proclaimed a fast, calling on the people to abandon wrongdoing and violence. In each of these cases, fasting was used to humbly seek out God's will. Over and over again, the Old Testament makes it abundantly clear that genuine fasting involves turning away from evil and turning back to God. Fasting that involves no such conversion of the heart is useless. Isaiah speaks out against fasting detached from conversion, announcing the worthlessness of fasting in the wrong spirit. And you can find this in chapter 58 of Isaiah, verses 3 to 7. So the scriptures continually remind us that external actions are insufficient. They must be joined to some internal conversion of the heart. The New Testament also highlights the ancient spiritual practice of fasting, and the life and teachings of Jesus provide particular insight into its roles and meaning. Before Jesus began his public life, he was led by the Spirit into the desert, where he fasted for 40 days. Jesus did not fast in atonement for his sins. He was sinless after all. He fasted in preparation for his mission. And the fact that Jesus was led by the Spirit out into the desert to fast is perhaps the greatest evidence we have that fasting is not merely a physical practice or another personal accomplishment. Rather, it is a spiritual exercise. In the desert, Jesus was tempted by the devil to abandon his fasting and have his fill. Jesus rebuked him, saying, "Man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God." Now, fasting is a sharp reminder that there are more important things in life than food. Authentic Christian fasting helps to release us from our attachments to the things of this world. It is often these worldly attachments that prevent us from becoming the best version of ourselves. Fasting also serves as a reminder that everything in this world is passing, and thus encourages us to consider life beyond death. Go without food for several hours, and you quickly realize how truly weak, fragile, and dependent we are. This knowledge of self strips away arrogance and fosters a loving acknowledgement of our utter dependence on God. There is great wisdom in the Christian practice of fasting. Though Christian fasting has been largely abandoned, the one expression of fasting and penitential practice that seems to have survived the turmoil of this modern era is that of Lenten penance. Although I suspect it is hanging on by a very thin cultural thread, which will break unless we can make people aware of the great beauty and spiritual significance of these acts. The Lenten experience is a perfect example of the Church's intimate understanding of the nature of the human person. The 40 days of Lent are an ideal period for renewal. Lent is the perfect span of time to form new life-giving habits and abandon old self-destructive habits. But most of us give up chocolate, and when Easter arrives, we are not much further advanced spiritually than we were at the beginning of Lent. Fasting is a means, but never an end. The purpose of fasting is to assist the soul in turning back to God. The benefits of fasting are innumerable, but all these benefits are secondary to the desire to embrace God more fully in our lives. Whatever form of fasting you decide to employ in your life, you will have good days and bad days. You will have successes and failures. Stick to it. Don't give up. If you fail, try again. I pray we can rediscover the value of this ancient spiritual practice as modern Catholics, not for God's sake, but for our own. I am utterly convinced that if we are to develop the inner freedom to resist the temptations that face us in the modern world, we must learn to assert the dominance of the Spirit over the body, of the eternal over the temporal. If the Spirit within each of us is to reign, then the body must first be tamed. Prayer won't achieve this. Works of charity won't achieve this. And power of the will won't achieve it. This is a task for fasting, abstinence, and other acts of penance. You are a delicate composition of body and soul. Fasting is to the body what prayer is to the soul. Indeed, fasting is the prayer of the body, and bodily fasting leads to spiritual feasting. Thank you so much for watching this video.